Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be looking at the types of graphics that are used in higher graphic communication. We're hoping to develop our knowledge of different types of graphics that are used in both industry and in society. And then hopefully by the end of this video you'll be able to demonstrate your knowledge of the 3Ps and give examples of each of these. So graphic communication is all about sharing information in the most effective and the most efficient way. We'll use different types of graphics to share different information with different audiences. What this means is depending on who you're wanting to share information with, you have to gauge who they are, what they're interested in, what they're maybe buying, what they're maybe selling, what they need to know, and then at that point you select a graphic that's appropriate to share information with them. The quality graphics that we use really will determine the success of how we get that information across, and a lot of time it determines the success of the product or service we're offering. You know, good products have good graphics. It makes people think that they're quality. It makes people think that it's a reliable product, it's a reliable service, because it seems like there's been a lot of money invested into it. So having good graphics is a really good investment, and being able to produce good graphics is a way of making sure that products and services are well received. So we can organise graphics into three main categories. We have preliminary, production and promotional. And these are the three types of graphics that we commonly refer to as the 3Ps. Depending on whether the graphic is produced manually, so with pencil or pen and paper, or it's been produced digitally on a PC, a tablet, laptop, a smart device like an iPad or an iPhone, the graphics will still fit into one of these categories. Okay, let's start by looking at preliminary graphics. So these are graphics we use for our planning activities, and they'll cover things like 2D and 3D sketches. These might be rendered with colour, they might just be left as simple black and white. They could be dimension sketches, which have sizes added to them to give an indication of the overall size of a product. They could be thumbnail graphics used for planning the layout and organisation of a web page or for a magazine or poster. They could be storyboards used in the planning of an animation, or they even could be the link and structure plan for an app or a website, showing how all the individual sections of an app or sections of a website join together and flow between one another. Overall, what we use preliminary graphics for is planning, developing and creating, and they help inform the later stages of the development of our graphics. So let's take an example of a preliminary graphic. This is a thumbnail sketch that I referred to earlier on in the video. It's used to plan publications like magazines and web pages and posters and apps. You can see it's a very simple sketch with some annotated comments around the edge of that. You see that things like the images are shown with a box with a cross in it, quite similar to a saltire. And it's a really simple basic graphic that you use at the early stages of the production process for, in this case, a magazine, and it's shown 2 pages, what we would call a double page spread. What I'd like you to do just now is consider the 2 questions at the bottom of the page and explain why this style of graphic is suitable for using in the planning stage, and explain why this type of graphic is not shared with the client. Take a minute just to think about these, and then when you're ready, unpause the video. So let's first look at why this graphic is suitable for using in the planning stage. It's really suitable for this just because of its simplicity. Given the fact that it can be produced really quickly, it's obviously been done just with pencil, and it's given a simple overview of the layout of the magazine, and it's given a clear indication of where things like images, text and other items on the page will be placed and organised. The comments can be added really quickly, and you can make multiple versions of this, which would allow you to share all your ideas with a design team. It's not really shared with the client because of the fact that it uses information that is not commonly understood by the client. They might not quickly interpret that the lines indicate different lines of text. They might not understand that the images are symbolised with the cross in the box. Also, because it is quite rough work, you're not wanting to show the client lots of ideas at this stage. You want to take time to refine these and do that over a period of time. So whilst you might show a more sophisticated thumbnail, this one certainly wouldn't be shown to the client. Let's now take a different example of a preliminary graphic. In this case, we've got a dimension sketch, and it's been used to plan the production of an object prior to it being 3D modelled. You can see it shows an elevation, a view from the front, and above it a view of the plan, which is a view from above. It's got dimensions added to it, again to British standards, but it is a rough sketch, and it just gives you a quick indication of what it's going to look like. What I want you to do just now is consider the 2 questions below. So explain why this style of graphic is suitable for using in the planning stage, and explain why this type of graphic is used before 3D modelling. It'd be good now to pause the video and consider it just for a minute, and when you're ready to hear the answers to the question, just unpause. Much in the same way that the thumbnail graphic shown in the previous example was suitable because of its speed of production, it's the same for this graphic. It gives a nice, simple understanding of how the object's going to look. It gives an idea of proportions. The sizes are a good indication to support what we're going to do going forward. It's used primarily before 3D modelling because it helps us understand what sizes we're going to use, what shapes, what processes we're going to have to use in this process, rather than going to the computer and trying to model something with no indication of sizes. Having an idea of how it looks and what size it's going to be is really helpful at this stage. Let's now move on to production graphics. These are graphics that contain technical details and precise information. They'll include dimension drawings. Now, where these differ from sketches is that you'll use drawn equipment, like on a drawing board, or you would use computer-aided design in order to be able to do this. Drawings like exploded isometrics, so 3D views where all parts have been exploded and separated from one another, like the image shown on the right. Assembly drawings that would show how a product is completely put together. Detail or sectional views, which provide enlarged views of an object, or where an object's been cut open to show the internal workings. Parts lists detailing each individual component, or things like site, location and floor plans which show the layout of buildings and where they are put in the wider environment. Production graphics are those we complete at the development stage of a project, and we really use these to inform how we're going to manufacture, build or construct something. We use these for manufacturing, to provide accuracy and precision, and crucially to provide technical detail that engineers can use going forward. Let's now look at an example of a production drawing. Here we have a building drawing, which is a floor plan just of a typical house. First, I want you to consider the questions shown at the bottom of the video, describe the information shown in this type of production graphic, and state 3 professions that you think would use these production graphics. Take a minute or two to think about these, pause the video, and when you're ready for the answers, unpause. There's a range of information shown in this floor plan. The dark, solid black lines indicate where walls are. The curved lines indicate where doors are positioned between rooms. It also shows windows, it shows where a staircase is. Also indicates sizes and dimensions of rooms and the names of those rooms, as well as other features like sink tops, hobs, toilets and wash hand basins. It gives critical information which is well proportioned, it's accurately positioned and sized, and it gives a clear indication of what that building will be laid out like. In terms of professions that would use these production graphics, architects, builders, joiners, electricians and plumbers, as well as estate agents who would market properties and sell them. Finally, let's look at promotional graphics. Now, these are the graphics that draw attention to a product or an item, a service or even a piece of information. These will include most commonly things like magazines and brochures and other desktop published items. It'll include CAG renderings and environments, so computer-aided graphics renderings and environments. And what they'll show is the illustration of a building or an environment or a product within a wider setting to give a more realistic appearance. Illustrations will also fall into that category. Presentations and displays on a much larger scale, so even the likes of videos and slides that are used all fall under that category of promotional graphics. Physical models and packaging designs, websites and apps, as well as animations and photographs all come into that category of promotional graphics that can be used to promote something. Promotional graphics quite generally are used to promote, but also to advertise and present things to the public to make sure you capture the audience and give the information to them as quickly and effectively as possible. Let's now look at an example of a 3D CAD illustration of a part of a visualizer camera, but it's also shown alongside a dimensioned orthographic drawing. So what we have is a promotional graphic on the left and a production graphic on the right. First of all, let's consider the question below. Explain why it would be better to share the 3D CAD illustration on the left with the client rather than the dimensioned drawing. Take a minute to consider this and unpause the video when you're ready to continue. Whilst the graphics shown are of the same object, they are very different in terms of communicating information. The production graphic shows a lot of the technical information, whereas the promotional graphic on the left shows a more realistic view of the object, and it's easier to interpret for the client. You can see the physical colour, you get an idea of materials and shapes, whereas you get a flat, two-dimensional impression of far more technical information that you might not be interested in as a client. As the client, you're interested in the final product, how it's going to look, how it's going to appear to the customers, and that's why having illustrations that have colour and rendered materials into them are far more appealing. But obviously this is just one type of promotional graphic. Lastly, let's look at the advantages and disadvantages of the 3 different types of graphics, starting with preliminary graphics. As we said earlier, this covers sketches, illustrations and thumbnail layouts. They're quick and easy to produce, which is one of the main benefits, just because of the tools that we use to do it, which is typically pencil and paper. It's a really good way of recording a lot of ideas and designs quickly so that you can share them with the design team. We can annotate them very quickly with additional information and make changes as we go. They are useful when communicating ideas to your team, but in certain sections you cannot communicate them with a client. One other benefit is that they can be produced easily on site. So if you were on a construction site or a building site or remotely showing it to a client, you can make very quick changes and still communicate that information with them. Disadvantages are that they're not normally technically accurate or dimensionally accurate, which can lead to the miscommunication of information, which takes a lot of care. In terms of production drawings, dimensioned orthographic views, exploded drawings, sectional views, etc., they're very important when you're communicating something about a product, one that has multiple components in order to show the technical details or how they're assembled. It also shows the dimensions that they include. The main benefit is that they're accurate and always drawn to scale. In some instances, you might use a library of reusable parts that you can build up to speed this process, but it does tend to take longer because you're refining the process. In terms of disadvantages, a technical graphic or a production graphic requires training or knowledge to be able to interpret it properly, and that can make it complicated for a consumer, and you are relying on your team to have the same level of expertise. It can be costly, and specialist equipment is required, things like drawing boards, tools, or more commonly computer software and hardware. Finally, in terms of promotional graphics, so illustrations, posters, brochures, etc., they will appear less technical and are far more appealing to the client, and will also give a much easier way of understanding them. They look far more realistic than production drawings, and in that sense can be more appealing. It then allows you to use them in promotional documents and brochures and videos. For example, a lot of cars, when they're promoted, it's not a physical object of the car, it's a render of it to communicate that information because it can look just as realistic. In terms of disadvantages, they will require a lot of skill and knowledge to create, but can be very, very effective. They can sometimes also give a false impression of the product, making it look better than it actually is. A huge disadvantage of a promotional graphic, particularly in reference to products, is that you can't physically handle a rendered model.